It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 2011 General Election Candidates Forum on behalf of the Bloomfield Neighborhood Association Committee, BNAC. We are fortunate to have Michelle Bobrow as our moderator. She is the former vice president of the New Jersey League of Women Voters and a member of the Maplewood South Orange League. As a trained moderator, she has officiated at public forums in several locations around New Jersey, and we've been pleased to have her with us for several times now. So please join me in welcoming Michelle Bobrow.
And it's a pleasure to be back. League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages informed and active participation in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The goal of the League is to empower citizens to shape better communities worldwide. Tonight, we are going to hear from two candidates for one seat in each of the 3 wards. So, not only am I asking you to turn off your cell phones, but also any other electronic devices, and there is to be absolutely no recording during this event. Hold your applause until the end of the program, please, to allow maximum time for hearing candidates' opinions. Third, when it's time for public questions, all questions must be pertinent to the issues and related only to the areas in which the committee members have authority. And I may disallow questions which do not follow these guidelines. I may edit questions. The format for tonight is as follows. The candidates will give an opening statement of 1 minute. Then they have 2 minutes each to respond to an advance question. Then written questions which have been previously submitted will be asked, followed by, time permitting, questions from the audience, adhering again to the rules of relevance, uniqueness, and civility. The timekeeper will display cards for 1 minute green, 30 seconds yellow, 15 seconds blue, and stop, of course, is red. You may finish your sentence, but no paragraphs, no statements after that. So let me introduce the candidates by ward, even though they are seated alphabetically. For Ward 1, Elias Chalet and Robert Goworick. For Ward 2, Nick Joannou and Kent Weissert. For Ward 3, Carlos Bernard and Sue Ann Penna. And we're ready, they drew lots for their opening statements. So this is the order in which they will speak. First, Mr. Bernard.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Carlos Bernard, and I'm running for council in the 3rd Ward. I would like to thank everyone who came out this evening and all of those watching at home. It is important for all of us at Bloomfield residents to take part in this election process to make their voice heard by coming out to vote. Our township is on the verge of transformation. The Bloomfield Center redevelopment is underway. A new energy is building in the Bloomfield. I am prepared to represent the 3rd Ward during this exciting time. We need elected officials who are ready to keep up with changes that are coming to our township. As a proud Bloomfield citizen with a strong record of community service, my deep relationship with the township has prepared me to take this responsibility. As the cost of necessities rises, our residents are forced to do more with less. We need a council that can balance keeping taxes low with providing services that make Bloomfield such a great place to live. Our residents love Bloomfield because they know it's a safe, diverse, clean town with great educational, recreational, and cultural opportunities. We need to live up to these standards while being physically responsible, and I know I am the best person to do this for the 3rd Ward.
Thank you. Ms. Penna.
Good evening. On November 8th, the residents of the 3rd Ward will decide who will represent them for the next 3 years. Tonight, I ask for your vote to be that representative. I can no longer sit on the sidelines while the current administration continues to make one bad economic decision after another. What has happened in the past 10 years is the unabashed abandonment of finding solutions to important basic quality of life issues. We have seen a 100% increase in property taxes, a 52% increase in crime, 20 and 30-year tax abatements to developers that will increase, not decrease, our property taxes, and a parking authority that has bonded $20 million without the consent of the people. A vote for my opponent is a vote for business as usual. I look forward to serving the residents of the 3rd Ward with an eye on fiscal responsibility and a think-outside-the-box attitude to get things done so we can all enjoy life in Bloomfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Joanno.
Good evening. I am Nick Joanno. I am the 2nd Ward Councilman seeking re-election. I have a 10-year history of involvement and activism in Bloomfield. Prior to my election in 2008, I attended all Bloomfield Town Council meetings and Planning Board meetings, missing only 1 or 2 in an 8-year span. I stand for accessibility and availability to constituents on a 24/7 basis. That means all constituents. Independence. I work for the people of Bloomfield, not a political party. Fiscal responsibility, listening to constituents and taking their suggestions to heart. Ethical policies and behavior in government. Finally, transparency in government. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Gawarek.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Warwick, and I'm not a member of a well-established Bloomfield family or a man that is well off. I'm just a hard-working family man that loves his family, his home, and his town. I decided to run because, like you, I've been frustrated with my property taxes and the increase in crime. Like you, I feel that the current administration either doesn't care or can't solve these issues. I've put my ideas on a piece of paper and have gone door to door talking about the issues that are important to the people of the 1st Ward and Bloomfield. Lowering property taxes is my #1 priority. My opponent doesn't seem to view this as an issue because nowhere has he written that he is even willing to do anything about the endless rising of property taxes. When I talk to the residents of the 1st Ward and hear their concerns about property taxes and crime, I feel their frustration. Do you want tax relief or to continue with tax grief? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chalet.
Thank you. I am Elias Chalet, and I'm running to represent the 1st Ward on Bloomfield Township. Bloomfield needs an elected official that can lead our community out of these difficult economic times. I am that leader. As a 30-year resident, I know what a wonderful place Bloomfield is to raise a family, run a business, and call home. I want to give back to the township that had allowed me so much success by ensuring that other families can enjoy the same excellent life mine has. Bloomfield is on the verge of reinvention. The Bloomfield Center and the North Center development projects promise to bring commerce and jobs to Bloomfield. As a councilman, I will not represent the 1st Ward, but also be a voice for all Bloomfield residents, from entrepreneurs looking to start a business to job seekers looking for their chance to re-enter the workforce. I will also ensure that the high standard for public services and quality of life that Bloomfield citizens are used to are maintained by keeping our police and fire departments strong, protecting our open space and our children's recreation, and ensuring that our local government is responsive, transparent, and efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weiser.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kent Weiser. I would like first to thank the Bloomfield Neighborhood Associations Committee and the League of Women Voters for having this forum. It has often been said that an educated citizenry is the true basis of any democracy, and I concur completely with that statement. I have lived, believe it or not, in the same house all my life here in Bloomfield. I was born there. I went to school through the Bloomfield Public School System, and then I went to school at Rutgers. And one of the things that struck me through all that time is that our property taxes have only gone in one direction, sometimes more rapidly than others, and particularly under the present administration, it seems that they've entered warp speed. I intend to act as a taxpayer advocate if I am fortunate enough to be elected to the council to not only slow down that warp speed, but to change direction so that our property taxes go down rather than up. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, the question which has been submitted to the candidates: where do you think Bloomfield stands now in areas that you feel are of significance, where you would like the town to be in each of these areas? It is noted that bonus points are given for describing how you would provide leadership to get from where you see us now to where you want us to be. And please focus on your ideas, what you believe in, and what you would like. The first response, Mr. Joanno.
Oh, thank you. There are 5 areas of significance which need to be addressed: tax stabilization, increased revenues, improvement of fiscal operations of municipal government, paid-to-play ethics ordinance, and completion of the downtown redevelopment. The greatest potential area of cost savings for the township would be in the aggressive pursuit of shared service arrangements with neighborhood communities. We need to identify what Bloomfield does best and offer these services to other towns. Our award-winning health department, animal control service, fire department, recreation department are examples of the best that Bloomfield has to offer. Other towns such as Glen Ridge are already interested in sharing service arrangements with us. In addition, we need to critically review and evaluate our IT department for the latest technologies that will provide the best level of sophistication, thus saving time and improve services for our residents. Our recycling program and increased code enforcement would have a positive impact on improving the revenue stream within our township. I would strongly support a greater recycling program within our schools that would expand beyond the collection of paper. Small businesses need to be encouraged and nurtured. A pay-to-play ordinance is desperately needed. No one should feel that they can curry favor on purchase favorable outcomes by donating to the government body's campaign. I have and will support the downtown redevelopment. With the current uncertainty of the financial markets, we must be diligent as to how money is being spent regarding our vendors and our consultants. My position is that I'm optimistic yet realistic that there are many challenges yet to be overcome. We must make sure that the return is worth the investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bernard.
Clearly, the first thing in everyone's minds right now is jobs, jobs, jobs. It is a nationwide problem that requires a local solution. Bloomfield is on the edge of major transformation, and we can ensure that this process brings new employment opportunities to our residents. The Bloomfield Center redevelopment project is moving forward, and as councilman, I would ensure it continues progress. A great downtown will attract new businesses and more employment opportunities. However, our workers shouldn't have to wait until the rebuilding project is finished to reap its benefits. As councilman, I would encourage local hiring for this project and constructions and other development efforts to ensure our workforce can prosper as Bloomfield grows. Recovery will come not only by consumer spending, but also by public saving. I will keep a watchful eye on spending at Town Hall and insist in transparency. Any spending must support and protect our community while keeping low taxes enough to allow economy to flourish. A second area of significance is the well-being of our children. As a father, it is important to me that my sons grow up in a community that provides a safe and welcome environment. As councilman, I will fight for a stronger police presence in the 3rd Ward and ensure that Bloomfield is as safe as it can be. I understand the need of saving money in these tough times, but that doesn't mean cutting police and fire services, which only makes times even tougher. Bloomfield and the 3rd Ward deserves high standards of protection and freedom from fear. Our children also need to be active and feel at home and outdoors in their community. Bloomfield is home to a number of beautiful parks and open spaces to allow our children to be active in a fresh air environment. Bloomfield is already a beautiful place to live, and as councilman, I will ensure that these natural beauty remains pristine and accessible for all generations to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weiser.
I have 2 priorities, both of which are somewhat related in connection with what I think the problems of Bloomfield are. One of them is most definitely the high taxes. That probably comes as no surprise to any of you. It certainly comes as no surprise to me. As I have walked and knocked on doors and spoken with my fellow citizens and my neighbors, many of them have expressed a concern that they feel they are being forced from their homes by the high rate of taxation. To me, that is intolerable. It is also very bad from the point of view of a neighborhood. I think that having stability in a neighborhood, having a mixture of different ages and backgrounds, having older people, children, those who can react and learn from each other, is very beneficial to a sound neighborhood. And if you force people from the neighborhood because they simply can't afford to live in a house that they may have spent 40 or 50 years living in, it just really gets my goat. The other thing is that Bloomfield has a wonderful opportunity which for so many years it has neglected. And that opportunity, in good part, lies in the Third Ward. It lies in all of the abandoned and neglected industrial properties with good acreage, which, if we had half a brain in terms of our governing body, we would be able to develop. We live near places such as Morris County, Somerset County, where some of the business giants in American life live. Stephen Forbes, may I mention just one of them? Have we consulted those persons? Have we sought to bring business into this community so that we get ratables that do not cost us more than the ratable brings in? It seems to me we have not. It seems to me we have high-paid officials in our local government offices, in our business offices, who have done absolutely nothing to do that. I would like to seek to change that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gawarek.
I feel the current administration has severely hurt families due to the high property taxes here in Bloomfield. With property taxes being so high, we are chasing good people out, and during this hard economic time, we are unable to replace them. Seniors who have lived there in their home for decades now find Bloomfield unaffordable. My solution is to cut government spending across the board 5%. Look into department efficiencies and better streamline government. Go through the town budget line by line and cut unnecessary spending. Basically, find the fat and cut it. Cut expensive consultants and use residents to donate their time and their skills. My second big issue is crime. Currently, there is 52% increase in crime, and that is unacceptable. I had 2 break-ins across the street from me the past 2 years. A month ago, there was a mugging on Hoover Avenue. I would like to work with the police to keep more patrolmen on the street. I spoke with the police officer, and he stated that the biggest factor is when a policeman makes an arrest, the amount of paperwork that needs to be done before he can go back out on the street to patrol. This process may take up to 4 hours. My idea is to work with the police department to find a solution to get them on the street, offer ideas such as having the senior officers who are not on patrol perform the processing and paperwork duty so that we could quickly get the patrolmen back to patrolling. This will give us a sense of more officers on the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Penna.
Thank you. As I walk through the Third Ward, there are only 2 topics on the residents' mind, and that is property taxes and crime. As I mentioned, over the past 10 years, property taxes are up over 100%, and in 1 year, we saw our crime rate go up 52%. This all goes back to a lack of leadership on the part of the current administration. I would like to see our property taxes at the very least stabilized. This year, the town saw an unprecedented number of appeals on property taxes, mostly coming from the Third Ward. People are struggling during this economic downturn, and instead of using extra money to pay down bills or make repairs to their home, they put it aside, knowing that the current administration will raise taxes yet again. I propose a 5% decrease in the overall town budget, with each department doing their fair share to find areas we can streamline and assessing the need for the number of consultants and making sure we get the best vendors when we outsource. Regarding crime, this 52% increase is an absolute disgrace. We have had carjackings and armed robberies and have heard not one word from the current administration. I will work closely with the police department to find programs and solutions to address the issue of crime in the Third Ward. People should feel safe in their neighborhoods. Not only do we want to be protected individually, we want to protect our communities as well. We must keep the smallest of crimes in check, or they will escalate into serious offenses. Once criminals know that we will not tolerate any crime in our community, they will be hesitant to come to our neighborhood. We need a strong and involved representative in the Third Ward, one that will think independently from some political machine or special interest group, and that representative is me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chalet.
The central concern of township government right now needs to be the economy. We all know the downtown redevelopment will bring more jobs and tax revenues into Bloomfield, and I expect that it will. But we can't stop there. Before the project is even finished, we must find ways to encourage local hiring on this and any other construction projects that might arise. I met my business success in the real estate sector, and I see lots of potential for economic growth in Bloomfield. As they say in real estate, it's all about location, location, location. The access that we have to New York City, we do have the location. If we encourage more people to settle in Bloomfield, then we'll attract more businesses and great revenues. Bloomfield North Center is another important business center for Bloomfield that will be instrumental in our economic recovery. Public services are the second area of importance I want to discuss. I want to lower taxes in Bloomfield, but that does not mean that I will slash our public services. Public services are essential to our quality of life, and I feel strongly that our fire department and our police force in particular need to be kept strong. Our kids need safe, clean, open space to play in and explore. I want to make sure that Bloomfield keeps all these things and build on them. To ensure that keep taxes at a level that encourages both growth of the private sector and receptive to public needs, efficient, neither austere nor expensive government will be one of my priorities. I will hold municipal department heads personally responsible for their budgets. I will insist on transparency in government so that you, citizen, can more easily see how your dollars are being spent, and I will hold regular office hours so that we can keep a dialogue going between the people and their representative. For any community to function, it needs strong leadership, supported by a vigilant public, and I will provide that leadership by working with the people of Bloomfield. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions have been submitted in advance, and the first question, which is for every candidate, you have 1 minute each to answer. The first question was submitted by Michael Woods of the 1st Ward. As a young voter, I think one of the greatest challenges every elected official must take on is job creation. I have so many friends who are chronically unemployed with very little to look forward to. I'd like to know from each of the candidates what they believe they can do as council members to help create good-paying local jobs. We will start with Mr. Weiser.
I suppose one could say there are two ways of creating good-paying local jobs. One approach is to simply increase public hiring, and therefore you create additional jobs. Unfortunately, that approach ultimately leads to fiscal destruction because the private base decreases, the public base increases. The only sound solution is to attract business into this community, business that will create jobs and will create development, not to attract necessarily residents, because they don't create jobs. They may create public jobs, but not otherwise. We need to attract business.
Mr. Joanno.
I would agree with that assessment. Since Bloomfield has lost its commercial base, the heart and soul of Bloomfield are the small businesses, and we need to nurture, encourage, and provide whatever tools necessary through municipal government to offer the opportunities for businesses who will hire local people to come into Bloomfield. If we look at merely the North Center, both areas, we can see the amount of restaurants. I'm very proud that Bloomfield has become a mecca of restaurants that have attracted people from all communities. You're welcome.
Mr. Chalet.
As a real estate broker, this is what I do for a living. I do deal with people on a daily basis. And right now, Bloomfield is on the verge of, we have a very bright future. We do have the Bloomfield Center redevelopment. We have the North Center development. And those will bring a lot of revenues, bring a lot of jobs to Bloomfield and, for the people of Bloomfield.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Penna.
Thank you. Government does not create jobs. Rather, the government can offer incentives to bring businesses into town. Having businesses in town benefits Bloomfield. We have ratables, and it benefits the residents by having an opportunity for jobs. And that is a win-win situation for both residents and the business. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gawarek?
Bloomfield doesn't have a residential issue. We have a business issue. We have to reach out to businesses and try to pull them into Bloomfield. We don't need any more apartments being built. What we need is businesses coming to Bloomfield and working with us so that we could develop more jobs. And the way we would bring back jobs to Bloomfield is offer incentives. Depending on the size of the business, that would depend on the incentive.
Thank you. Mr. Bernard?
I believe we definitely got to bring businesses into the town of Bloomfield. Hearts Mine, we definitely got to make that into commercial real estate. Another thing with our current administration now, our residents of Bloomfield now have an opportunity to get the priority to get a job instead of letting people from other towns be able to apply for positions in Bloomfield. We definitely got to get the redevelopment in downtown going so we could give opportunities to the residents of Bloomfield that are going through these harsh times at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question which was received was from Cynthia Toro of the 3rd Ward. I recently watched a YouTube video of Sue Ann Penna, candidate for 3rd Ward Council, in which Ms. Penna seemed to be advocating for more guns on the streets. I'd like to know if Ms. Penna really believes that bringing more guns to Bloomfield will make us safer. So, Ms. Penna gets 1 minute. Anyone who wants to respond gets 30 seconds, and I'll go down the line. Ms. Penna.
The Second Amendment is one of our rights, and I do believe in the Second Amendment. I do not believe that everyone should have a gun, but unfortunately, the criminal always does seem to get the gun, while the law-abiding citizen does not. So the guns are not for everyone, and I do believe in our Second Amendment right. Thank you.
Thank you. Going down. Please hold it. Mr. Bernard?
I disagree with the gun situation. I believe at this time our surrounding cities are lacking present police officers and allowing significant amount of weapons out in the street. It's just going to make it tougher. Let's assume you have a weapon in your house and your house does get broken into. Now that's a weapon that's out in the street. We don't have enough police presence on our surrounding cities, and that's just another worry, like for myself that has children, and anyone here that understands that the tough times, a lot of people are doing things that they're not supposed to do.
Thank you. Mr. Chalet?
Well, what I can see is a flip-flop. You were just complaining about the rate, the crime is going up. And
Please
yet you
please
are on
stick to the
YouTube.
issue.
I'm sorry?
Stick to the issue.
Well, it is. That's what is part of the issue, that she is promoting guns, and yet she was complaining about, the crime that is rising in Bloomfield. So, you know what, which one do you believe in?
Do I have a
Flip-flopping
chance?
or?
Do I have a chance to
No, you
read?
don't. In your closing. Mr. Gawarek?
I believe that people in the Second Amendment rights, you have the right to a firearm. Most people that I know that own firearms keep them in safes so that people can't be broken into. If a person has a firearm, someone may think twice before breaking into your house, knowing that you have a gun on the premises. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Joanna?
The gun issue is beyond a national issue. We've got to look at the county, we've got to look at the state, and we've got to look at the federal. We need to partner together. The guns that are being run up from southern states that are used illegally are the guns that people that are involved in crime. The police are doing the best they can in areas, but when the trafficking of guns, and it becomes commonplace for any individual who has got a buck on any given time can purchase, we've got to stop the trafficking from the southern states that come into New Jersey and New York, and these $50 specials. It's not to
Thank
abridge
you.
someone's.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Mr. Weiser?
First, New Jersey already has very stringent laws regulating and controlling the qualifications for anyone who wishes to possess or use a firearm. These laws certainly should be more than adequate to keep any unfortunate person or person who do not wish to have a gun from doing so. Secondly, In all jurisdictions in which firearms use and possession have been expanded, the crime rate has drastically increased. Quite frankly, most criminals are much more afraid of the honest citizen who has the right to defend him or herself than they are of the police. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Mary Shaughnessy of the Second Ward. Our downtown redevelopment has been a work in progress for at least 15 years. Please name 3 concrete steps and timetables that will show Bloomfield taxpayers that we are moving in the right direction, and tell us what you will do to support that progress. We are starting with Mr. Joanna.
I have supported all initiatives toward the redevelopment. It's an area that, unfortunately, we have stumbled with lawsuits that have set us back dramatically. The latest lawsuit has also put a cringe into our progress forward. I anticipate, and again, I'm optimistic that we can overcome the present lawsuit and move forward to the point where we can provide jobs. But again, I've got to look at the economy realistically. We have a problem in sense of who's borrowing, who's lending, and who's building. But I will support whatever initiatives are needed and necessary to move this project. It's too critical. It's the heart and soul of this township that this become a success.
Thank you. Mr. Gawarek.
Currently, we are bonded for $20 million for that project. What we need to do is really start pushing forward and see how we can avoid these lawsuits that derail us from the development. Instead of pushing people out of their homes due to eminent domain, we should have worked with the businesses and tried to focus on how we could work with the businesses to help develop that area. I would hope to try to push that project, but you'd have to look at the contract and see what exactly is happening and how we can push it.
Thank you. Mr. Weiser?
The first thing I think I would do is to consult with a number of neighboring communities who have very successfully used our proximity to New York and our designation as a transit village to develop and improve their own downtowns. Maplewood, Clifton, and Montclair come immediately to my mind. The second thing I would advocate is that in dealing with business owners, property owners, in especially Bloomfield Center, that a cooperative type of spirit be used rather than the bludgeon of eminent domain. That's something you normally use if you want to build a library or a sewage plant, not if you want to give property from one person so that another person can develop it. Finally, I would consult with the people of Bloomfield as to whether they have any ideas, and I would also consult with other business leaders, as I mentioned earlier, who have experience in bringing in capital and business.
Thank you. Mr. Chalet?
Well, this project is definitely moving forward, even with the obstacles that we have right now with the lawsuit. The project is very essential. It's going to bring a lot of businesses. It's going to bring tax revenue to the town, and it's going to create a lot of jobs that people are looking forward to. So I'm for it, and it will definitely happen. Thank you.
Ms. Penna?
Thank you. We're all for redevelopment. We're all for bringing businesses into our town. And that's really what we need to bring more in, is businesses, not housing developments. While we're for redevelopment, we don't appreciate the way that it was gone about through eminent domain, through bonding taxpayer dollars. But we do hope that a project is going to be moving forward, because I can tell you that most of the residents that I speak to are tired of looking at the hole in the ground in the middle of the center. Thank you.
And Mr. Bernard?
I do support the downtown redevelopment. It's going to be something good for the Third Ward and all Bloomfield. We definitely have to figure out why are these lawsuits are coming up every time we try to move the project forward. A new wrench is getting thrown into the project. We definitely got to consult with our neighbors, get new ideas. There's so many people in the audience that I guarantee have great ideas for that Bloomfield redevelopment project. Talk to the businesses that are locally in the area. What ideas do they have? It can't be a one-way decision. It has to be multiple ideas in order to move this project forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I was in error, first of all. If a question is directed to one candidate, only that candidate can answer. So please forgive me, you each have 1 minute if the question is directed to you. And the question is for Mr. Weissert and Mr. Joannow by Pat Gillerin of the 2nd Ward. How do you plan to support your constituents by staying in touch with them, hearing their concerns, suggestions, and complaints? What type of outreach will you use to find out what is important to them? When will you be available and how? Phone, email, office hours, etc. Mr. Weissert.
Well, first of all, I have to say to you, I will not be available 24/7 because I do like to grab some sleep now and then. Secondly, I have an active law practice. I practice out of my home, and I have an obligation to support myself and my family. Having said that, my telephone number is published. I encourage, should I be fortunate enough to be elected, anyone can call me at any reasonable time and air whatever concerns they have with me. I have email. They are certainly free to communicate with me in that regard, and I would be more than happy to publish that. As you may have gathered, as an attorney, I'm not shy about talking, and I like to do so. So I'll be happy to continue that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Joannow.
As the incumbent 2nd Ward councilman, I have walked the entire 2nd Ward 3 times. I've knocked on at least up to this point 4,800 doors, and I've connected with people. I connect with people on a daily basis through phone and through email. I am accessible 7 days a week. My wife can attest to that. From AM to PM, I respond to people accordingly, and I serve as their liaison, as their advocate, and if and when elected, I will continue since I've retired, and I do this on a full-time basis and gladly to serve the residents of the 2nd Ward. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going back on my word. I'm very curious to see how the rest of you would do it. So let's go backwards. Ms. Penna. 30 seconds.
Yes, I also plan to be as accessible as possible to our residents, and I would love to hold a monthly town hall meeting for the residents where we can have an exchange of ideas and hear what some of the issues are going on in each neighborhood. It's important to always have that line of communication open, and as well with businesses.
Thank you. Mr. Georg.
I would like to have also monthly town hall meetings where people can come, share their ideas. I'd also would like to create status reports, because that's what we do in the private industry, to show you the development of what you're asking, what let's say the call is for. If someone asks me that they want a parking sign, I would have to show them the status report and see where it is.
Thank you. Mr. Chalet.
20 out of the 30 years that I've been living in Bloomfield, it's been serving the public. My office, I'm a real estate broker, it's right on Broad Street. My door is always open to them. I am very involved with the community, and my doors were always open, and you know, it's a good community, and we have a lot of friends that they know where I am. My door is open for everyone, you know, for any problems or any concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Bernard.
I definitely would like to bring, excuse me, town hall meetings to the districts, just to get the residents of Bloomfield involved. Also have a special page, an email page, that if they was to see me on, let's say, Ampere Parkway, they could just look me up and find out what I'm doing in that section. We have to find a way that they have more ways to get in contact with your representatives than what they do now.
Thank you. Thank you all. The next question is for all of you. It is from Karen Banda of the 2nd Ward. Bloomfield recently gave a developer a 30-year tax abatement. Would you have given one, and why or why not? Let's go every other. Mr. Bernard?
Excuse me.
And you each have 1 minute.
Thank you. The reality is that these are not abatements. We're talking about now generating pretty much $2 million a year tax revenue with all with all the properties that are out there now. We have to find out exactly what's really going on with the redevelopers and the abatements. The abatements. I don't have too much information because I don't sit in the office where all the information is provided. but we have to find a way to look at the stuff, make it more public to the public, so they could be aware of everything.
Thank you. Mr. Gawarek?
I would not have gave a 30-year tax abatement. What I would like to know is who's going to pay for these kids to go to school and who's going to pay for the sewage? The property owners of here in Bloomfield. Thank you.
Ms. Penna?
I also would not have given the developers a 30-year tax abatement. I would like to see homeowners get a 30-year tax abatement as well. The influx of the project is just going to cost the town more money as we bring in more and more people. So it would not be saving us money, I don't believe.
Thank you. Mr. Chalet?
Well, there is no such an abatement on Bloomfield. Maybe it's in Newark. You have to know the difference between abatement and a pilot program. Right now, the developers, they do not have an abatement. It's a pilot program, which is they pay in lieu of taxes. Right now, with the two properties that they're being developed, they pay about $450,000 in taxes. With the newer development, they will bring a little bit more than $2 million a year for the tax, for the Bloomfield town.
Thank you. Mr. Joanno?
In terms of the 30-year pilots, I supported the 30-year pilot for the downtown redevelopment for a number of reasons. One, it's a transit village, and whatever encouragement financial that we could offer to the developer to take that property, which is horrific at this point, and put it onto our tax rolls and revitalize Bloomfield, I'm supportive of. I did not support the project on 225 Belleville Avenue. Should have remained commercial as opposed to residential. It is an area on 3 counts. One, should not have been given that pilot simply because it's not transit friendly. Number 2, there were major environmental issues, and number 3, the traffic issues. It was not conducive toward presently adding almost 250 residences in a flood-prone area with no simple way of getting out safely. Against it, against it, against it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Weiser?
In this particular case, I would have to agree with Mr. Joanno. I believe that the development in Bloomfield Center, to the extent that it is capable of providing future development and serving as a transit village, may well be desirable. In similar fashion, the development in the old Oaks Mills, in my opinion, is exceedingly undesirable, both for the reasons that Mr. Joanno stated, and also, quite frankly, because those happen to be historic old structures which could probably be much better readapted, including with environmental considerations, for future commercial use rather than residential use. I happen to believe very strongly in historic preservation and adaptive reuse, and I would much rather see a historical building reused and adapted for an appropriate purpose, rather than just go in with a bulldozer and tear it down and erect something new.
Thank you. The next question is for Ms. Penna, submitted by Diane Fuller of the 2nd Ward. As a member of the Bloomfield Board of Education, I know what a challenge it is to prepare a budget each year, which not only reflects the needs of our students, but also respects the financially challenging times our residents are facing. I have noticed that Ms. Penna has advocated cutting the municipal budget by 5% across the board, but has not delineated where these ideas would come from. Please elaborate on what services you would advocate reducing. 1 minute.
Well, I believe that each of the department heads should go through their budgets and see where we can streamline. Each one of us as a homeowner has had to do the same thing as we are suffering during these economic times. And I think to ask department heads to go through and look for those savings and streamlining is a fair thing to ask. And I do believe, as of now, the fire department has already made plenty of those cuts. So we would have to look at that department much differently.
Thank you. The last pre-submitted question is for all of you. It has been submitted by the Bloomfield Neighborhood Association Committee Candidates Forum Work Group, which includes residents from the 1st and 2nd wards. Bloomfield Life recently reported that, according to recent census statistics, the township continues to grow more and more diverse, despite a dip in total population within the last decade. How would you use this information in your role as council member? Let's go backwards. Mr. Weiser.
One of the difficulties I have seen over the years with diversity as an issue is that it is often used as a way of excusing behavior that A, is not appropriate, and B, takes away from our common and shared experience as American citizens. As far as I'm concerned, the way I would like to, I don't think use diversity is an appropriate way of putting it. I would like to make certain that all of our citizens are taught that they are Americans first, and whatever their other background may be, that comes second. And that is to not denigrate any other background, but is to simply stress the fact that we need common values and experiences and not those that divide us.
Thank you. Mr. Joanna?
Our Hispanic population has increased almost 44% in this township. We, as elected officials, must respond to that need in the sense that we need to be able to communicate and provide services to that population, and they need to know that we are able to respond to them. As such, I would strongly suggest that during the recruitment process that we are sensitive to individuals that can diversify our municipality, but merit should always come first. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chalet?
No comment.
Mr. Bernard?
I agree with Mr. Joanno. We definitely have to find ways to bring more things to the Latino community in the Third Ward or all around Bloomfield or any race. One of the situations that I was going through as I was knocking on doors, they were asking me, why don't we have someone that can translate or help us fill out current documentation? Why do we have to go into Newark? Why do we have to go into Newark or East Orange, let's say, to fill out a simple paper? We need something in the town of Bloomfield. That's where we live. We need something like that in order to help the Hispanic community or anyone that needs understanding in anything, and we don't have that now. We definitely need to bring that into this town.
Thank you. Mr. Gawark?
I grew up in an all-Italian neighborhood and also a Spanish neighborhood. Me and my family, we were the Polish people on the block. So I understand what it means to be different. But by the communities welcoming us, we all felt part of it. So what I would like to do is gather the community together and let's get to know our neighbors. Let's all reach out and try to help our neighbors because we're all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Penna?
Thank you. I think it's wonderful that so many diverse cultures are coming here to make Bloomfield their home. But while we have a different background, we share so much more in common than we do in differences. And the more that we highlight our differences, the less and less we all come together as Bloomfield residents. Thank you.
Thank you. It is now time for audience participation. You can line up very calmly. Make sure that your question is brief. Make sure that it is, as I said before, a question and no statements. And each candidate will have, if it is to one candidate, that candidate will have a minute, and others may respond for 30 seconds. Otherwise, 1 minute for all, and I will tell you how I will rule on that. You're on.
My name is Gary Skinner. I live in the 2nd Ward. 3 out of the 6 of you know me very well. 1 of you is just getting to know me a bit, and 2 of you don't know me at all. But anybody who knows me in Bloomfield knows this, and God I trust, and everybody else better show data. So here's some of the metrics, folks, why this current administration is failing us. Homes for sale.
Excuse me, what is your question, please?
Okay, I'll net it right out, ma'am. 85% of the budget in the town of Bloomfield is salary, benefits, and pensions for our public sector workers. I'd like to know this in the union negotiations that are going to be facing you. Basically, plain and simple, who's going to have the nerve to say this to the public service unions in Bloomfield? The first sentence in a union negotiation is always this. Boys, what are you giving back?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's the question, ma'am.
We did publicize that the question had to be able to be read in 30 seconds.
from now on. Excuse me, you've had your turn. We're going to go alternate, going down, starting with Mrs. Chalet.
No comment.
Mr. Joanna.
At this point, we have been in serious negotiations, and what we have done with our unions is very contentious. We've gone from a 5-step salary program within our fire and police to one that is extended to 12 steps. And I supported both of those initiatives. They are paying 15% of their health insurance, and on each individual that's hired, we're saving approximately $225,000 per person. That is a milestone. It's probably one of the first contracts of such in the state of New Jersey, and I supported both of those. Now, when I said hires, when I first came into office in '09, we had 90 firemen, we're down to 78. Those firemen that we have replaced are replacement. We have not hired anyone new. The TO for the police was 135 when I came into office in 2009. It's down to 122. We rehire, we didn't hire, we replaced people in positions. So for each of those,
Thank you. Mr. Weissert.
Well, it so happens that my background is in labor law. That's my specialty, labor and employment law. And during the course of my so far 37 years of practice, I've represented primarily employers in both the private and the public sectors. And one of the things that I've learned is that it is possible to be a hard bargainer without having dreadfully contentious or unpleasant negotiations, as long as one deals in a respectful and civilized way with the fellows on the other side of the bargaining table. And I would like to think that our public employees have as much a regard for this town and its citizens as they do for their own collective bargaining agreement, and I would operate on that assumption in meeting with them to deal with common problems.
Thank you. Mr. Bernard?
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. We definitely have to reach out to whoever's in charge of their contracts. We need to see how we could make everyone happy across the table. It's just not a one-sided deal. You know, we talk about the fire department giving a lot back, and that's understandable. We also have Bloomfield Police that also give back, and you know, we have to look at the contracts to see what could we do to it's just not a one-side deal. A lot of people are never going to be happy when you look into their contracts. They're going to be upset. But at the end of the day, you have to find a way to communicate with one another to make everyone happy across the table.
Thank you.
Communication.
Thank you. Mr. Gawark.
When talking about cutting for property taxes and giving us all relief, everything has to be on the table. We pay a lot of money for their salaries, for their pensions, and I think that they would be more than happy and willing to give stuff back. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Penna.
Thank you. We hold our firemen and our policemen in high esteem. And I think once we come to the table, and we all are experiencing such hard economic times, that both sides are going to be open to a give and take. And I think that our police and fire department will realize at the end of the day that that their salary does come from hard-earned taxpayer dollars, and that we can really find common ground. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, but it has to be 30 seconds. You've got a hook at the end of that.
Okay. Kevin Lindahl, Third Ward. My question is to Kent Weissert. The rent in this town has gone through the roof. I'm sure you know. It's over $2,000. Some tenants are paying $2,700 more in rent now this year than they were last year. People on fixed incomes can't keep up with these rent increases of 20%. Your opponent, Nick Joanno, supports rent control to try to keep these rent prices and rent hikes under control and to keep tenants in their homes. They can't afford to stay there. Do you support townwide rent control to keep tenants in their homes?
To the extent that, basically, I'll give you a simple answer. I would basically say no, because rent control is intimately tied to property taxes. If you're talking about property taxes going up and other expenses going up, and then saying to a landlord, you cannot increase your costs, well, what you're basically doing is saying the landlord should subsidize me. And quite frankly, I do not believe in having one group of citizens subsidize another group of citizens. I think that's almost un-American. And I do not think that it's really in government's business to get involved in the contractual relationship between parties. Usually, what rent control results in the final analysis, is fewer rental units and deteriorating rental units, because a landlord, if he can't make a decent profit on what he's doing, will simply go ahead and will not skimp on such things as maintenance. And that's one of the last things we want to have happen.
Thank you. Next question?
Trish Comstock, First Ward, President of the Bloomfield Tenants Organization. I'd like to talk to Mr. Weissert later about that. We'd have an interesting talk because rent control worked beautifully in this town for over a decade. Anyway, my question is, I'd like to know briefly from each of the candidates how specifically you would see to it that our ordinances are enforced. It's my personal experience that recycling has not been enforced, nor has heating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go, Mr. Chalet.
Well, we have to, as a councilman, I will make sure that enforcers are hired. That the town will hire people that will follow up on the recycling, that will enforce the recycling, and we have more of, enforcers, to enforce the, the issues that they are rewarding to the public.
Thank you. Mr. Joanna?
Code enforcement is a serious issue within the township. We need to increase the number of code enforcers, both from a municipal perspective and the collateral benefit from the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed school population has increased dramatically. I want to know, since our housing stock hasn't changed, where are these people coming from? We have health and safety issues. We have recycling issues. It's simply because we do not have the number of people on the street doing the enforcement. That would raise revenues and at the same time save tremendously on the potential for health and safety issues within our fire and police. I would strongly advocate for the increase of code enforcement aggressively. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weissert?
I certainly think we should aggressively enforce our code laws. However, I'm not so certain we need to hire additional personnel until I would have the opportunity to see exactly how hard our present personnel are working. I would reserve my decision as to whether we need additional personnel and additional expense. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bernard?
We definitely would have to look at the court enforcement. For one, I'm a person that constantly calling, why is my recyclables not being picked up? We have to start holding people accountable. Everyone here has a supervisor. If you're not doing your job correctly, your supervisor is gonna write you up or find out why is that job not being done correctly. That's one of the problems we have in the town. Our streets are not being swept, our recyclables are not being picked up, but we have to start holding people accountable. If you start holding accountable, the supervisor accountable, that problem should be solved.
Thank you. Mr. Gawark?
I think code enforcement has to be done by the citizens of Bloomfield, the residents. If you see an unkept property, call it into the township. The township should investigate this and investigate the property owner. Noise in the if the street is too noisy, police should be called and the person should be ticketed. That's how I would go about with code enforcement. I think it's the responsibility for all the residents in the township of Bloomfield to enforce code enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Penna?
Thank you. I believe code enforcement directly relates to the quality of life in Bloomfield, and I also believe it directly relates to crime. By having illegal apartments, noise problems, unkept property, it just shows residents in the community that nobody cares. So, and these minor infractions just easily become more exacerbated, and our communities start to look run down, and we need to show people that we care about how our community looks and how we treat it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Candy Strait, Second Ward. Earlier this summer, the Board of Education put out for competitive bid various service contracts, such as insurance brokers for healthcare insurance for the Board of Education, property insurance, legal, and others. If elected, will you put these bids out, because you have similar contracts for the municipality, will you be willing to put these bids out for competitive bid? Yes or no?
Let's go right down the line. Mr. Bernard.
Yes.
Mr. Chalet.
Yes.
Mr. Gore.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Hello, Sharon Soon, Second Ward. My question is for Mr. Chalet. Mr. Chalet, as somebody who owns a very significant amount of property in town, and therefore,
Can you repeat the question?
you own a significant amount of property in town, and as a result, you have apparently conflicts of interest when you are a council member. I'm just curious to know whether or not you feel that your dual roles as being a councilman and a property owner in town of a large number of property would be conflicting in either way, and if not, why so?
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, there'll be no conflict of interest at all. I am a property owner, and I am a tenant. So, as a leader and as an honest person, that will not interfere with my personal.
Thank you. Yes?
Jim Wallner, Second Ward. New Jersey's pay-to-play law has what I consider a loophole in it called the fair and open process. This allows the vendors to contribute to political campaigns while they have contracts with the town itself. My question to every one of you is that, are you in favor of the current New Jersey pay-to-play law as the mayor and the three recently elected council people are? And two, are you or any of you recipients of any of largesse from these companies?
Thank you. Okay, we'll go down the other way for Mr. Bernard.
I'm against it. To play, the pay to play.
Mr. Chalet?
You know, Bloomfield exceeds the current state requirement, you know, when it comes to that. So, you know what, everything is an open book. You know, what the reports that we deliver, you know, during the election, everything is an open book, everything is there. So I don't see any problem with it at all.
Thank you. Mr. Gore?
I'm definitely not for.
Is it in favor or not? Because that's the question I have.
I'm sorry?
Excuse me. You had your turn.
I am, yes. As long as it's open to the public so they can see who's donating to your campaign.
Mr. Gore?
Yes, I am for it.
Mr. Joanna?
I introduced a pay-to-play ordinance to the council. It was rejected by the majority of the council by a 4-3 vote. I'd like to read a statement. Mr. Boxer, the controller of the state of New Jersey and the head of the Election Law Enforcement Commission are asking lawmakers to require that local governments abide by the tougher state standards. Why should Bloomfield not? We need to be open and transparent to the people of this community. We need to set a bar. I have introduced it, and I will most likely bring it back to the table again. I think we should not, Bloomfield should not be up for sale simply by the merit of the contract is what determines, not the amount of bid. It puts individual governing council members in a position, if contributions are accepted, how can they fairly vote on any given contract? We must, in fairness to the people of this community, support and have a pay-to-play ordinance at the local level. Absolutely.
Thank you. Ms. Penna?
I also believe in very strong laws favoring pay-to-play, no vendors or employees contributing to campaigns. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weiser?
In answer to the question, I guess mine would be no, I'm not in favor of the existing law because I believe it should be stronger. I also happen to believe that it should apply to labor unions, because both public and private, because all too often what happens with organized labor is that they get sweetheart deals and contracts, and the money is simply recycled into one party, whose name I shall not mention, goes to them in campaign contributions, and those are the same folks who so proudly say, oh my goodness, no, we're not like those dreadful businessmen who would try to corrupt the political process. Let's have a little bit of equal treatment. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question?
Bob Hamilton, First Ward. Bloomfield, like most other cities in New Jersey, has huge unfunded liabilities for retirees' pensions and health care costs. Huge unfunded liabilities. Thinking out of the box, what would you do to stabilize and/or reduce the increase in property taxes in this town so we can even think about paying those unfunded liabilities?
Okay, let's go from Mr. Weissert to Mr. Bernard. Mr. Weissert first.
There are any number of approaches that can be taken to deal with that particular problem. One approach is to do what's called, traditionally in labor relations, red circling, where you treat new hires differently than you treat present employees, and active retirees are treated differently than present employees, simply because present employees and new hires have a greater degree of ability to plan for their retirement and to plan for changes in their fringe benefits during their retirement than to those who are presently retired. Therefore, the most desirable solution is to attempt to cut back on the wages and fringe benefits, or the retirement benefits, that presently active employees receive. I should also add, by the way, that another way of dealing with that problem is to extend the time period, the length of service under which one must serve in order to be able to retire.
Thank you. Ms. Penna?
I'm in agreement with Kent that we do have to have new rules for new hires. Eventually, we're going to be paying for more people who are on retirement than who are actually on payroll, and that is going to present a big problem for us going down the line. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Joanno?
Well, that is a state function. We don't have control over the retirement age of our employees, but we do have control over, in our negotiated agreements, extending both with our fire and police, going from a 5-step to a 12-step, which has made significant savings. And by the same token, both of those unions have given up zero increase in the last year. So I would say they've come to the table and they've contributed toward helping the residents of this township.
Mr. Gawarek?
I agree with Sue and Kent that we would have to change the retirement fund for new employees, whether using a 401k plan like we have in the private sector could work. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chalet?
Well, I don't have a direct answer because I don't want to just give an answer just to give an answer. I will definitely look into it more, and you can call me at my office, the next couple of days, and I'll be very happy to give you an honest answer for that.
Thank you. Mr. Bernard?
I agree with Nick with the whole new steps with the new hirees. We definitely got to look at the 401k and other stocks and bonds so we can make sure that everyone is taken care of properly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am calling you back to a question that was asked before.
Your name, please?
Oh, my name, Tony Spigotta. I'm a resident of the Second Ward. And calling you back to a question that was asked by Jim Wallner about pay to play. There was a second part to that question that nobody answered, which was, are you a beneficiary of any of the largesse of, I forget exactly how you put it, Jim, of vendors? Vendors who have.
Oh, okay. Mr. Bernard?
No.
Mr. Chalet?
No.
Mr. Gawarek?
No.
Mr. Joanno?
No.
Absolutely not.
Ditto.
There's your answer. Thank you. Next.
Well, actually, Pat Gilliran, Second Ward, actually that was part of my question, but I would like to know if if anyone has accepted contributions to their campaign from prospective vendors or consultants of Bloomfield.
Okay, we'll go down the line. Mr. Bernard, have you received any?
On my ELEC report, everything is published publicly for everyone to see in Bloomfield. I do follow ELEC reports and laws. There are contributions that I didn't have to report from the elect report law. Anything under 300, you don't have to report. I don't have nothing to hide. I have friends that work in the town, and they've been my friends for 10 years before I decided to run for councilman. So any of you out here in the audience, if you work in town and you're my friend for over 10 years and I decide to run, you're gonna give me $100, you're gonna give me $50 just because you're proud of me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chalet.
Well, for 30 years that I've been living in Bloomfield, I had so many friends and so many family members. So whoever donated to my campaign, it's right on my report, and it's open to the public. I have nothing to hide. I'll never have anything to hide. So feel free to check it out anytime you like.
Thank you. Mr. Gawarek.
Nope.
Mr. Joanna.
I do not collect from any vendors, any consultants, or any public employees. I think it presents for me a conflict of interest as their superior, and the answer to that question is zero.
I have not, and I will not. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Weiser.
Again, I'll say ditto. And that is to the last two answers.
Go ahead.
Manuel Lopez from the 3rd Ward. I'm going to try to flip that question around, and I'm going to ask every candidate, what kind of contributions have you given back to the town or organization, whether it was volunteer, your time, or money?
Let's go down the line. Sure.
I gave out turkeys. I gave out toys for the children. I gave out, I did a block party on North 17th. I did one on Charles Street. I also did help Berkeley set up their neighborhood watch association. I cleaned up Wassessi Park with my son that he plays high school football. I was in the Morris Canal not too long ago with my 2 little ones cleaning up as well. I also helped out to clean my area, Dodge Street and Lawrence Street with the church from the corner. What else? Let me just go to the other side. I am part of the Youth Guidance Council at Bloomfield, and that's pretty much it right now.
Thank you. Mr. Chalet.
Well, I am a taxpayer. I am on the Business Advisory Board in the town of Bloomfield. I am a member of the Bloomfield United Way. I am so many things that I help a lot, in my son's school, Franklin School, and so on.
Thank you. Mr. Gawarek.
I've snowplowed my neighbor's driveway, my neighbor's sidewalks. Went up to Franklin School where my daughter goes and plays in that park. Saw a mess, cleaned it up myself. I didn't need a pat on the back. I did it because I love my neighbors and I love my neighborhood.
Thank you. Mr. Joanna.
When I first ran for office, I made a promise to the taxpayers of this community that if elected, I would return my medical stipend, which I considered double dipping. I have returned to the taxpayers of this community $20,000. And if elected, I would do likewise. I consider it double dipping and unethical, and I can live by that. For the last 10 years, I have spent you could look on nickjoanno.org, the number of community organizations I have participated in. I spend a 30-hour week serving the people of this community, and I'm proud of that, and if elected, I will continue to do so.
Thank you. Ms. Penna.
Thank you. I am a part of UNICO. I'm an active member in the Bloomfield Republican County Committee, and whenever there are opportunities to help my neighbor, my neighborhood, I am there to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Weiser.
Well, many years ago, when the dinosaurs still roamed the earth, I was a member of the Bloomfield Civic Band for a number of years, and also the Bloomfield Orchestra. In addition, I was for a good number of years a trustee and for a period of time vice president of Bloomfield Oakside Cultural Center. As I think I mentioned before, one of my interests lies in historic preservation and adaptive reuse, and I think that's an absolutely marvelous resource for the community. In addition, for longer than I can remember, and that's a good long period of time, I have personally maintained there's a circle. I live on a cul-de-sac on Fairway, and there's a circle in the middle of that cul-de-sac, and I personally maintain that. Department of Public Works doesn't come. The one time that they did, they drove me absolutely nuts because it took them 16 hours to do what it took me 1. But other than that small detail, I've personally maintained that for probably at least 40 to 45 years.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Carol Humphreys, First Ward. To each of the candidates, what is your opinion and how do you regard the Bukowski Animal Shelter? And if elected, what would you do? Would you close it? Would you keep it?
Okay. We've got to change up this order. Ms. Penna.
Well, anyone who knows me knows that I am an animal lover, and I am in support of the animal shelter. And I must tell you that my 16-year-old dog is from Bukowski Animal Shelter. So I am a supporter of the animal shelter. Thank you.
Mr. Gawarek?
I'm a big supporter of the animal shelter. I love animals. It breaks my heart when I see them walking the dogs by the cemetery, but knowing that they could find good homes brightens my day. So I'm definitely for it.
Mr. Bernard?
I'm a big animal supporter. I have 2 doggy-day birdos at home, a pug, 2 turtles, a hamster. My wife loves animals. We love animals. We've been looking into getting into the volunteer for the animal shelter. Our next dogs, because it's more than one, is going to come from the animal shelter. So yes, I believe we have to keep the animal shelter going. It's good, and we have to get more people to start adopting these pets, man. Pets are good. It's your best friend. When you get home, your best friend will never complain. Ever. So I am for the animal shelter.
Mr. Weiser?
My name is actually Snidely Whiplash, and I hate animals. No, of course I support the animal shelter. I mean, quite frankly, just from a, should I say even an environmental point of view, if you have an animal that can bring joy to someone else, and especially at a reasonable price, you don't have to get some sort of fancy pedigreed animal that costs, $1,000. I think it's much better to find an animal, and by the way, hybrids are often much more healthy than purebreds, but I think it's a wonderful solution to a whole number of problems, and I think it's a fine institution that should be supported and continued.
Mr. Joanna?
I'm totally in support of the animal shelter. The fact that it's a volunteer organization and it survives and it does it very well. While knocking on doors, I was just every year so surprised with the number of dogs that people have. They provide comfort, they provide emotional support for people and children. And having this institution in our township adds another amenity to the township of Bloomfield, of which there are many. And whatever I am able to do and totally to support the shelter, I am there.
Thank you. And Mr. Chalet?
I absolutely support the animal shelter, definitely.
Thank you.
May I ask a second question?
Do we have anybody else who wants a first?
I have a dog and 2 cats, and both my daughters have 2 cats, so, I'm fully in support of the animal shelter. I've contributed food there. What I'd like to ask is where the members sit on the idea of privatizing services in the township of Bloomfield. I think of the traffic enforcement, parking. I've read stories where they've lost money, are inefficient, and so forth. Tax collection, my mortgage company pays my taxes and things like that.
Okay, so the question is, would you support any privatized services?
Privatizing, yes.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Chair.
Get it out of the way. Privatization, like shared services, there is no template. Bloomfield provides many services to its residents that are excellent. Where Bloomfield can save money, and it's to Bloomfield's benefit, to its taxpayers, to its residents, I support privatization.
Ms. Penna?
I would also support privatization as long as it was fiscally, if it fiscally made sense and it would be the best thing for the town. I would support that, yes.
Mr. Weiser?
I would also support privatization. As a matter of fact, I had an experience recently in which I saw the Township of Bloomfield apparently both pay for a private operator and a member already on the payroll to perform the same function. and that happened to be when I went to a rather mystical experience known as a property tax appeal. And I saw Mr. Pizarro, our assessor, there, and I also saw two representatives of the assessment firm that did the revaluation for Bloomfield. And it was a unique experience because it looked like Mr. Pizarro was sort of a ventriloquist dummy going back and forth to the fellows who had been, and I assume they got paid for being there also, who gave the Board of Tax Appeals all of the reasons why I was completely out of my mind for thinking that my property value had gone down over the last year.
Mr. Bernard?
I do agree. I will support the benefit as long as it's good for Bloomfield and good for the residents of Bloomfield.
Mr. Chalet?
I do support it, yes, as long as it's good for Bloomfield.
And Mr. Gawark?
As long as it's cost effective, I say why not?
There's been a lot of, Candy Strait again, second ward, there's been a lot of talk about vendors and pay for play. Just a quick question. Ryan Graham, owner of Fairview Insurance, who has the insurance contract in town, have any of you had a campaign contribution from either the firm or from the individual?
Okay, let's go for Mr. Bernard down.
No.
Mr. Chalet?
No.
Mr. Gawark?
No.
Mr. Joanno?
No.
Ms. Penna?
No, I haven't.
And Mr. Weiser?
Other than reading about the name in the newspaper, I don't even know who he is.
I just like, Kent Weisert already gave his answer.
Your name, please.
Kevin Lindahl, Third Ward. I'd like to ask if what the other council members' opinions are on rent control. Are you for rent control, and why, or are you against it?
Okay. Mr. Bernard?
I'm with Frank for rent control. Who wants to tell their children that there's no place for them to go at the end of the night if the rent hasn't been paid? We have to find a way to stabilize and be fair to the owners, just to be as fair to the renters. So I am for rent control.
Mr. Chalet?
Well, I am against every unconscionable, rent. So as long as it's, under the mandate of the law, that's fine.
Mr. Gawark?
Without property tax control, there could be no rent control. If the property taxes keep on going up, we have to find ways to cut property taxes, and then you wouldn't need rent control. It's about fiscal responsibility, and it's up to the township to provide that so that the people that rent don't suffer and the people that own homes here don't suffer.
Mr. Joanno?
There's been an ordinance which I supported at the last council meeting regarding providing a rent, if you want to call it, control. It's based on a CPI with a max of 5. I'm curious to see when the ordinance is written, and I will simply scrutinize that ordinance, but I do support rent control. When we have individuals who are living month to month, there needs to be a safety net for them, considering approximately half of our population are renters. The CPI and the 5% certainly falls within the limits of landlords to make a comfortable living and do maintain their buildings. But I still feel that increases of 10, 20, 30, 25% are just beyond what is considered reasonable and considered, on my part, capricious. We need something that's fair and reasonable to protect those individuals.
Thank you. And Ms. Penna?
Like Robert, I believe that property tax control goes hand in hand with rent control. And I believe that the renters and the property owners need to come together against the administration that keeps making it more and more, it keeps raising the prices and making it harder and harder for us to afford to live in Bloomfield. We both suffer the same fate. You have to leave an apartment, we have to leave a home. So we need to come together on the same side of the table and get the cost of living down in Bloomfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Since we've exhausted all questions, it is now time for closing statements. You have 1 minute each, and we will go in reverse of the opening statement. So, Mr. Weiser, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to again thank the sponsoring organizations as well as all of you for coming out on a not all that pleasant night and taking the time to listen to our views and to try to get to know us a little bit better. One of the great pleasures that I must confess that I've had as a candidate has been the opportunity to go out and to get to know all of my neighbors and friends a little bit better through the campaigning process. As I noted before, as far as I'm concerned, the rise in property taxes is probably the single most significant issue affecting all residents of Bloomfield, either directly or indirectly. And if something is not done about that, a lot of the other issues that we're talking about, quite frankly, won't make any difference because we won't have any people living in Bloomfield. They'll all be down in North Carolina and Florida. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chalet.
Thank you. After 30 years as a part of this community, I am a part of this social fabric and vibrant business environment. I want to give back to Bloomfield. Bloomfield needs business-minded leaders who can bring unique experience to the rejuvenation of our public sector and solid managerial skills to our government. As a councilman, I will ensure that Bloomfield grows into a township where entrepreneurs like me seek to do business. Workers earn an honest day's pay, and families can raise their family and children in safety and happiness. I will pursue those goals. I will pursue those goals while ensuring that our vital public services remain robust and that our government is responsive and efficient. I promise that I will be accessible, hardworking, and eager to listen to all First Ward residents and the larger Bloomfield community. Bloomfield requires new creative leadership on our Township Council. My background is in business, but I am also a proud family man and a committed member of the Bloomfield community. I'm asking for your support on Election Day, November 8th. Cast your vote for Elias Chalet for First Ward Council, and together we can build a better Bloomfield for everyone. Thank you for listening, and good night.
Thank you. Mr. Gawarek.
I would like to thank you all for coming. I would like to thank the BNAC and the Women's League for hosting this event. In closing, let me just make a pledge to the people of the First Ward. I will be a council member that will hold Town Hall accountable. I will be a council member who is approachable and listens to the needs of the community. I will be a solutions-driven council member who will demand results and not make excuses. I will be a council member who puts Bloomfield above any personal interest. I will be a council member who will respect your trust and be honest with you. I will work hard to prove to the First Ward Bloomfield residents that their town has their best interests in mind when making decisions. I want to be able to lay my head at night knowing that I did right by all the people in the First Ward. My name is Robert Gawarek, and I want to be your councilman. Vote line B, B10 on November 8th. Thank you, and all have a good night.
Thank you. Mr. Joanno.
Good evening. I would like to thank everyone for their attendance and participation this evening. It has been a pleasure to meet and exchange dialogue with the many residents that I have spoken to during my door-to-door campaigning, where I have visited, except for about 100, and I'll finish that by next week, every household in the Second Ward. It has been a valuable experience that has further educated me as well as motivated me to work harder. Oh, I got you, Mayor. I've got you covered. I was there about 3 weeks ago, please. If reelected as your Second Ward councilman, I can give you another visit if you like, actually. I will dedicate myself to serving the residents of the community on a full-time basis and continue to be available and accessible by both email and phone. I have proven myself over the last 10 years. My record speaks for itself. As your incumbent Second Ward Democratic councilman, residents of this community are my first priority.
Thank you very much. Ms. Penna?
I would like to thank everyone for their participation tonight, the Bloomfield Neighborhood Associations Committee and the League of Women Voters. I look forward to the opportunity to represent the Third Ward, and I commit to the residents to be a person of action who gets results, will be fiscally responsible with the taxpayers' hard-earned money, and who will succeed on issues that the current administration has continually failed. It is time to stop business as usual and bring in new, independent, and diverse opinions to the town council. It's time to get away from the political machine vote. Instead, let's elect a person who will put the interests of Bloomfield first, and that person is me. My name is Sue Ann Penna, and I ask for your vote on November 8th, B10. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Bernard?
I want to thank all of you for coming out today. I want to thank my wife. She missed school just to be here for me today. Thank you so much. I am running for the Third Ward Council because our community needs strong, committed leaders to bring Bloomfield into the future as our town transforms. We need to make sure that Bloomfield workers can enjoy its benefits both as builders and as employees. We need to balance our fragile financial positions with responsibilities of caring community. Our families need to know that their streets are safe, that their children are growing up in a loving environment, and that Bloomfield is a township that values these ideals. In some respects, such as with our economic renaissance, I believe Bloomfield is on the right track, and I look forward of maintaining our progress as councilmen. In other regards, such as police services, I believe that there are improvements to be made, and I, as councilman, will ensure that the necessary steps are taken. In order to pursue my goals for Bloomfield, I will need your help. I am running for council as a representative for the people and as a politician. I hope you go to the polls on November 8th and cast your vote for Carlos Bernard and join me in the journey into the future of Bloomfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to thank the candidates for expressing their honest and well-thought-out opinions and positions, and to the Bloomfield Neighborhood Association Committee and Bloomfield College for arranging this evening. Let me remind you that a vote by mail ballot is still in order, and it must be received by the county clerk by mail by November 1st or in person by November 7th. Forms are available at njelections.org and at your county and municipal clerk's office. And some are outside in the lobby. Polls are open November 8th from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. League's motto is bring a friend to vote, so make sure we have a good turnout. On November 8th, you will vote for New Jersey Assembly and Senate representation, county and, as you've heard, municipal offices. There's also a ballot question dealing with giving permission to the state to pursue sports gambling at casinos and horse racetracks. Information on this question is at the League of Women Voters website, lwvnj.org. Thank you, and let me also let you know that this will be rebroadcast on Comcast 35, Verizon 30, and it is available online at wbmatv.com. Thank you. Go home safely.